Welcome to Storytime with Angel. I am here with my penguin sweatshirt today, the penguins in their best Christmas gear, because we are going to read the third installment for the Mischief Corner Books anthology Chestnuts Roasting this week, which is Tony Griffin's story. And Tony's story is her second Smoky Mountain Bears story. The first one was in the Cabin for Two anthology called A Bear in the Woods. This little guy, the second Smoky Mountain Bears story, is called Wreath of Fire, and actually picks up with a young man that we met very briefly at the end of Bear in the Woods. Mischief Corner Books Chestnuts Roasting Anthology is coming out on November 27th, just in time for your Thanksgiving shopping weekend, for when you need to take a break from the madness. We do have 4 stories in the anthology this year. We are going to have blog tours coming up and lots of fun prizes and things going on. So stay tuned for that. But right now we want to talk about Tony's story. So this is Wreath of Fire, and our blurb says, Michael's trying to start a new life away from his abusive father, but he's drifting and not sure what he wants. When he accidentally starts a kitchen fire, the hot new fireman who comes to the rescue is not only another bear shifter, he's Michael's mate. Michael desperately needs to get his act together and figure out what he wants if he has any hope of claiming the bear fated to be his. All right. So, from Wreath of Fire by Tony Griffin, coming out November 27th in the Chestnuts Roasting Anthology. Michael could feel eyes on him. He knew the other firefighter was probably staring at him, thinking he was a complete and utter idiot for not being able to cook a simple meal like fried chicken without setting the kitchen on fire. Well, the man would be right. He was an idiot. Michael ducked his head, not wanting to see the condemnation he knew would be in those eyes. He still had no idea how he was going to explain all this to Patricia and George. Michael contemplated writing them a quick note to apologize and to let them know he would send them money to pay for the damage when he got a job, before packing his bag and leaving. Hopefully he would be able to get away before either of them got home. The loud squeal as tires came to an abrupt halt, followed by the frantic call of, "Michael! Michael!" reached him. He sighed, knowing it was already too late, and glanced up as Patricia raced across the lawn. She didn't run to the house to see the damage like Michael thought she would. Instead, she ran right up to him, engulfed him in a hug, and held him close. "Jesus, I was so worried. I saw the smoke, and then the fire engine," she said as she held him tighter for a few seconds before letting him go, and looking him up and down. "You're okay? You're not hurt, are you?" Michael shook his head, tears falling as he tried and failed to talk past the lump that seemed to be lodged in his throat. Finally he whispered, "I'm so sorry." "Now we'll have none of that, boy," Patricia said soothingly as she reached up and wiped away his tears. "It was an accident. Well, I'm assuming it was. You didn't set out to burn down my house, did you?" "No, ma'am," Michael said on a sob. He couldn't seem to stop. That's what I thought. Now stop your crying. You weren't hurt, and we have insurance to cover this type of thing. Plus, you've given me the perfect excuse to finally get my kitchen remodel that George has been putting off for the last 10 years. Patricia smiled at him, then pulled him into another hug. Michael held on for dear life. He had no idea what he'd done to garner such understanding and acceptance from these wonderful people, but he wouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. All he wanted was to do something nice to show his appreciation to this wonderful family, and he'd managed to fuck that up royally. Michael pulled away when his body started reacting funny and he felt uncomfortable. Why the hell was he suddenly sprouting wood while hugging the woman he thought of as a surrogate mother? Heat bloomed in his cheeks as he burned in embarrassment. His flushed cheeks would just add to the complete mess he was sure he looked. "Come on, let's get out of the way while these nice firemen finish up," Patricia said. Michael had completely forgotten all about the other men. He remembered one of them coming over and leading him outside while the others battled the blaze, but Michael had been too distraught to pay too much attention to them. He thought the man's name might have been Martin or something similar. He couldn't remember. Michael looked away from Patricia at the men on the lawn, stretching out a hose and packing it away. His gaze was caught immediately in the intense blue gaze of one of the firefighters he had yet to meet. His heartbeat increased as Michael stood there, unable to look away from the man, who stood no more than half a dozen feet in front of him. The man wasn't what most people would have considered gorgeous. Yes, he was tall, probably close to half a foot taller than Michael. He obviously had muscles. Doing the job he did, Michael doubted there was an ounce of fat on the man anywhere, and the bulky, bright yellow protective outfit made him look even larger than he was. His dark brown hair was cut short, shaved close on the sides, with only the barest hint of length on the top. His nose was large, his eyebrows thick and bushy, but the blue of his eyes shone through. The man's lips were surrounded by a beard that followed the contours of his face. This man obviously was well groomed. The beard was trimmed close and neatly, and Michael wanted to feel it against his naked skin. His body was going haywire, and Michael didn't know why. It wasn't until he took a deep breath that it finally clicked. The man in front of him wasn't human. He was a shifter, and he smelled very much like he might be Michael's mate. "Michael, is everything all right?" Patricia asked him. Michael hadn't even realized he'd made the small whimpering noise until she asked. Michael shook his head. This couldn't be happening. No way he could meet his mate now, when he'd just proven to everyone what a complete and total fuck-up he was. He couldn't deal with this right now. He turned to Patricia. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. Michael would be saying that for the rest of his life. He turned and darted for the house. Michael wasn't thinking, he just knew he had to get away from everything, and the only way he knew how was to shift. He raced through the house, the scent of the fire strong and cloying as soon as he opened the front door. He made it to the back door and ran outside and across the back lawn. Michael ignored the calls from Patricia and a deep, sexy voice he could only assume was the man he thought might be his mate. He could hear their heavy steps behind him, but he wasn't stopping. He vaulted over the back fence, not bothering to waste time on the locked gate, and ran into the forest. Thankful for his shifter side, Michael ran barefoot through the trees. The temperature had to be close to freezing. A bitter wind blew through the forest, causing Michael to shiver despite his higher-than-average body temperature. When he was certain he was out of sight, Michael stopped and took a moment. His heart pounded furiously in his chest. Why? Why did the world have to be so cruel? Things were finally starting to look up. He was going to go back to school and get his GED, and then he could decide what he wanted to do with his life. Instead, he thought it would be a great idea to try to burn down the house of the only people who had been kind to him in his life, proving to the one person he'd wanted since forever that he was a complete loser. Michael stripped quickly. It was too cold to stay still for too long. He thought about his bear, concentrated, and felt the shift start to take over him. Within moments he was standing on all fours, the thick black coat of his fur keeping him warm from the icy winds. Michael lifted his head and roared out all his frustration, then took off into the woods. For once, he wanted to be alone. Alrighty, well that's going to be Michael's story in our upcoming anthology. Once again, that is coming out November 27th. We do have pre-order links available right now, and I'll put these on the bottom of the blog post for Amazon and All Romance in case you want to order early and often. But we will have lots of blog posts coming up, courtesy of Pride Promotions. They are running a nice blog tour for us the week before and after the launch, so look for those. Like I said, there will be some fun prizes involved and lots of fun blog posts. We will be back next week with something I haven't picked yet, so we'll see you then. Thanks for listening.